When Alex Carter was 10 years old, he was spending the weekend home alone in his family's old farmhouse on the outskirts of Boise, Idaho. And Alex was watching cartoons on the only TV in the house. Without warning, the screen went black. He got up, fiddled with the buttons, and the picture came back. As soon as he sat down, the TV flicked off again. It happened 3 more times before Alex began searching for the remote, thinking the batteries were dying. He walked around the room, checked the coffee table, nothing. Then he looked behind the recliner in the corner. That's when he saw him, a man crouched in the shadows holding the remote control and staring straight at Alex with wild, unblinking eyes. His hair was greasy and tangled, his smile stretched too wide. Alex froze for half a second before bolting through the front door and across the yard to his neighbor's house, screaming. When police arrived, the man was still inside, hiding in the corner where Alex had seen him. They never figured out how he got in, but he'd been living in the attic for days. In Dundee, Scotland, an 8-year-old girl named Ella was walking home from school one gray afternoon. Her mom worked long hours and was never home before 5 p.m., so Ella had her own house key. As she reached the front door and lifted the key toward the lock, the door suddenly swung open. Her mom stood there, in her robe, pale and tired. She'd come home sick from work, but instead of greeting Ella, she looked past her and asked in a trembling voice, "Who are you?" Ella turned around. A tall man in a trench coat was standing halfway down the path watching them. The moment he realized he'd been seen, he turned and hurried off down the street. Her mom slammed the door and called the police. To this day, she says that catching the flu that morning might have saved her daughter's life. When Jacob Rivera was 13, his family rented a small house in Mobile, Alabama. His mother struggled with drug use, and his dad tried to keep the household together. One night, loud bangs and dragging noises echoed from his mother's room. His father burst in, but she was asleep. The window was wide open, and the TV had been dragged across the room, facing outside. Spooked, his father locked the room and made everyone sleep in the living room. They stayed awake most of the night, listening. Around 5 a.m., they heard footsteps above them on the roof, slow and heavy. A few hours later, as Jacob sat on the couch, he glanced down the hallway. The door to the unused guest room was cracked open, just enough to see a long, gray finger curl around the edge of the frame. He screamed, and his father grabbed him as they ran out of the house, barefoot into the night. They never went back for more than their belongings. The window in that empty room had been forced wide open. In 2011, 13-year-old Ryan Miller lived in a 2-story home in Vermont, where his bedroom occupied the entire attic floor. The space was cozy but isolated. No one upstairs could hear him at night. Just after 2 a.m., when Ryan woke and noticed a shadowy shape at the foot of his bed, a round silhouette peeking over the edge, his heart pounded until he remembered he'd hung his baseball cap there earlier. He laughed quietly to himself and drifted back to sleep. Half an hour later, he woke again, saw the same shape, and reassured himself it was only the hat. But the third time, he reached for his nightstand to grab his water bottle, and his hand brushed against his hat. The hat wasn't on the bedpost. Ryan flipped on his lamp, and there, a man's face stared at him from over the foot of the bed, eyes wide and crazed. Ryan screamed, bolted out of the room, and raced down the stairs. When his father rushed up moments later, the window above the bed was open, curtains fluttering in the wind. In November 2020, Chris Delaney stayed with his college friend Evan in Raleigh, North Carolina, while interviewing for a new job. After celebrating with too many beers, Chris stumbled upstairs around 4 a.m. to use the bathroom. As he splashed water on his face, he caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror, an eye peeking through the gap in the half-open door. He shouted and slipped on the tile. When he scrambled up, the eye was gone. Evan called from downstairs asking if he was okay. It couldn't have been him. Chris convinced himself he was drunk and paranoid, went to bed in the guest room, and passed out. Sometime near dawn, he awoke to the feeling of a cold hand gripping his foot. A raspy voice whispered, "Can you help me?" Chris screamed and sprinted into the hall, colliding with Evan. Police later discovered a woman in her 40s hiding in a closet downstairs. She'd wandered in during the party and never left. The eye he'd seen was hers. During a ski weekend in Lake Placid, New York, Trevor Kim and 3 friends rented a log cabin near the woods. On the 3rd night, a blizzard rolled through. Around 2 a.m., Trevor woke to get a drink and heard frantic knocking at the cabin door. Hesitant, he called out, "Who's there?" No answer. The knocking stopped. He cracked the door open with the chain still latched. No one was outside, but a single trail of footprints in the snow led away into the storm. Feeling guilty that someone might need help, Trevor pulled on his boots and followed the tracks a short way until they ended abruptly right in the middle of the yard. No return prints, no tire marks, nothing. He turned back fast, heart racing, and slammed the door behind him. Seconds later, the same pounding knock started again. When his friends came running, they found only wind and silence outside, the snow already smooth again. Trevor never figured out who or what had been at the door. When I was 12, I lived in a tight-knit neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, where all the kids on the block played together every weekend. Our favorite game was manhunt, basically hide and seek for older kids, and the woods behind our homes were our playground. We had a rule. No one could go more than 1 backyard's length into the woods. Beyond that, it got dense and dark, and our parents didn't want us wandering too far. I always hid in the same spot, behind an old rusted oil drum that had been dumped back there years before. Nobody ever found me. One Friday night, there were only 6 of us playing. I teamed up with my friends Kyle and Devin. As soon as the game started, I bolted straight to my usual hiding spot. Normally, I'd see flashlights sweeping through the trees, hear laughter and footsteps. But that night, it was silent, too silent. Then I heard someone approaching. No flashlight, just slow, crunching steps. Thinking it was one of my teammates, I whispered, "Kyle? Devin?" No answer. Then suddenly, whoever it was started sprinting straight toward me. I leapt to my feet and tore out of the woods, crashing through branches and sprinting into my backyard. I expected someone to follow, but when I looked back, nobody came out. By the time I got to the front yard, I heard my name being called. All my friends were standing out front with their parents. That's when I noticed 2 police cars parked nearby. One of the officers told us they were warning the neighborhood. A violent offender had escaped from a local psychiatric hospital less than a mile away. When I told my parents what had happened in the woods, they went pale. To this day, I try not to think about what would have happened if that person had caught me first. When I was 13, my mom, stepdad, and I, along with our 2 dogs, rented a small beach apartment in Outer Banks, North Carolina for a weekend getaway. It was late spring, quiet season, not many tourists around. The place seemed normal. Small kitchen, 1 bedroom, pull-out couch in the living room. My mom and stepdad took the couch, and I got the bedroom to myself. That night after dinner, I stayed up playing games on my laptop. I knew there'd be no internet, so I'd preloaded a few offline ones. When I finally shut it down, it was around 1:30 a.m. I laid back in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. The apartment was completely silent until I heard it, a long, slow sigh, deep and loud, from inside my room. It wasn't a noise through the wall, and it wasn't the dogs. The door to the living room was closed. I froze. My first instinct was that maybe my mom had come to check on me, but when I said "Mom," there was no answer. The air felt heavy, cold. I threw off the blanket and sprinted across the room, yanking open the door and bolting straight into the living room. My stepdad sat up, half asleep, asking what was wrong. I couldn't even form a sentence. I slept on the couch the rest of the night. The next morning, I told them what I'd heard. They laughed it off, said I probably imagined it, but I know what I heard. That sigh was too close, too human. 2 winters ago, my friend Hannah and I drove to her family's holiday home in the Blue Mountains, Australia. We were heading to a New Year's Eve party a few hours away and planned to crash at the house afterward. The town was practically deserted that time of year. When we arrived mid-afternoon, the air was freezing and every nearby vacation house sat dark and empty. Before we left for the party that evening, I remember locking the front gate. It had been hard to close, but I made sure it clicked shut. We got back just after midnight. The first thing we noticed was that the gate was wide open. I felt my stomach drop. I knew I'd locked it, but I didn't want to freak Hannah out, so I brushed it off. We went inside and started making snacks in the kitchen, trying to shake off the cold. Then suddenly Hannah came running into the hallway, white as a sheet. "Someone's outside," she whispered. We froze. The house was silent except for the wind. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the deck, slow, deliberate. The back door rattled as if someone was trying to pry it open. We hid in the hallway, clutching our phones, but there was no signal. After what felt like forever, there was a loud crash in the backyard, followed by a massive flutter of wings as birds scattered into the night. That was enough. We grabbed our stuff, sprinted to the car, and floored it down the driveway. As we reversed, the headlights caught a figure running alongside the house, just out of reach of the light. We didn't stop driving until we hit the highway. We went back the next morning with her uncle, and everything was normal. No footprints, no broken locks. But both of us knew what we saw. Someone or something had been waiting out there for us. When I was 10 years old, my parents decided to repaint all of our bedrooms over one weekend. Because of the fumes, we had to sleep downstairs in the basement. Me, my baby brother Caleb, and our dog. The basement wasn't finished. It had an old pull-out couch, a spare crib for Caleb, and a door that led into a small, dark utility room where the furnace and water heater were. I hated that door. Even closed, it always seemed like something was behind it. That first night, my parents tucked us in, turned off the light, and went upstairs. The air felt colder down there, heavier. Around midnight, Caleb started crying. I sat up, groggy, and leaned over the crib, whispering to calm him down. It worked. He grabbed my finger and drifted back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. Only this time, it wasn't crying. It was screaming. A shrill, terrified scream that jolted me upright. I scrambled over to his crib. Caleb was standing up, gripping the bars, his little face red and wet with tears. He wasn't looking at me, though. He was pointing straight at the utility room door. My stomach dropped. The door was cracked open about an inch. I swear it had been shut. "Mom!" I called, but my voice came out small. Then I heard it. Something inside the dark room shifted, like a box being dragged or a boot scraping the floor. I felt eyes on me, watching, waiting. I scooped up Caleb and bolted upstairs as fast as I could, nearly tripping on the last step. My parents met me in the hallway, both half asleep and confused. When my dad went down to check, he said the utility door was wide open and one of the old paint cans had tipped over inside. We didn't sleep down there again. Even now, 20 years later, if I walk past a half-open basement door, my heart still races because I can still see Caleb's tiny hand pointing into the dark, and I'll never forget the sound that came from that room.